Are you a child of God? Have you been obedient to the gospel as it's laid out within the pages of the New Testament through faith, repentance, confession, and baptism for the forgiveness of sins? If you don't understand those things, send us an email and we'll be happy to chat with you and help you study. If you are a child of God but you've not been living faithfully, you've wandered away, maybe like that son in Luke chapter 15 who wandered off to a far land and he lived a riotous life. And if you wandered away, you know what the Father says? Come home. There's a story about a preacher who was coming home from a gospel meeting, and he was riding a train back in the days when people rode trains. As he was riding this train, he looked across the aisle and he saw a young man that had his head bent over and he was wringing his hat in his hands. And the preacher said, he got up and he moved over and he said, "Boy, I don't mean to be nosy, but I'm a preacher. I deal with people all the time and I can tell that there's some problem that you've got." The boy looked up and said, "Yes, preacher, there is. You see, years ago I left home, and when I left it was an ugly scene. I cursed and I told my father, I'm never coming home." He said that was years ago, and I tell you, I want to go home so bad. And I sent my mother a letter and I told my mother that I would be on this train on this day and that if it was all right for me to stop, that as the train passed the property I'd be looking out, and if it was okay for me to stop, if she could just put a white handkerchief out on the fence post, and if I saw that, I'd know that it was all right with Dad for me to stop. And he said, "Preacher, I just can't imagine that when my mother talked to my dad that he would say that it would be all right for me to stay. That it would be all right for me to come home. And frankly, preacher, I'm afraid to look." The preacher said, "Boy, would you like for me to look?" And he said, "Yes. As soon as we go around this corner, it will be my parents' property." The preacher said, "I'll look, boy." And just as they went around that corner, the preacher shouted out, "Boy, look, look!" There on the fence post was a white handkerchief, and on the next one was a white sheet, a white tablecloth, and everything white they could find in the house. And when the boy got to the station, he walked to the door, and there his father was with outstretched arms. The boy fell into his arms, and they both wept and hugged. And the father said, "Welcome home, son. Welcome home." I don't know where you've been or what you've done, but I know this. I know the Father wants you home. Join us next week for your Daily 180.